The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued an arrest warrant against the Russian president. What happened next? Beijing has embraced Putin. Xi is using the opportunity to build a formidable strategic alliance against the West. He's landed in Moscow. Let's debate.
3 days ago, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes.
Today, 17th of March 2023, the International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation. For Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, and for Maria Lvova-Belova, Commissioner of the Russian President for Children's Rights, for the alleged war crimes of deportation of children from Ukrainian occupied territories into the Russian Federation.
The move was immediately welcomed by the West as a major breakthrough.
Give us your reaction to the International Criminal Court issuing an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think it's justified, but the question is, it's not recognized internationally by us either. But I think it makes a very strong point.
But Putin is unaffected. Undaunted, the Russian president welcomed Chinese leader Xi Jinping to the Kremlin.
邻国也是战略协作伙伴国，这样一个定位决定了呢，我们彼此之间有着非常密切的关系。
They are solidifying ties and talking Ukraine.
Мы внимательно ознакомились с вашими предложениями по урегулированию острого кризиса на Украине.
Now the West is watching closely.
Xi is meeting with President Putin in Russia. We expect that China may use this visit to reiterate calls for a ceasefire under its peace proposal. The United States welcomes any initiative that advances a just and durable peace.
The toothless warrant by a titular world court has done nothing to stop Putin. Let's debate.
Okay, quickly, Andrew, what do you think is the proposal that the Chinese premier carries with him to Moscow?
Well, you've got to look at the China's 12-point plan. The top point in the 12-point plan is that the need to respect other countries' territorial integrity. Well, that's the kind of message for Russia. But on the other hand, it also highlights the fact that in any kind of peace deal, it's not just a one-sided story. You've got to respect the security concerns of the other side. In other words, otherwise it will be just one side imposing its will on the other, and the territorial or the security concern of Russia should also be taken into account. And also the 12-point plan highlights the need for humanitarian kind of consideration, because there is a humanitarian crisis happening. So many people killed, injured, and the whole country in disarray and in rubble.
So this, in the given situation, Peter, in the given situation, as we saw the pictures, it appeared to me quite clear that unfortunately for America, America has lost the war. Because Putin and Xi have the edge. The business is fine. They've not degrown. They have leverage over the West. The attempt to bomb the Nord Stream by the Americans has failed. In fact, been exposed by our own journalists. And it is really indirectly, if you saw the American response, Antony Blinken's response, he seems to be really looking forward to the prospect of an announcement from Moscow. We really welcome any peace effort that comes in. I mean, this is the kind of language that comes from an America that seems to have capitulated in this matter.
The United States
I don't think that.
still
No, my question is to Peter, please. Yeah.
The United States still seems to be intent on winning this war militarily. As dangerous as that is, and as unlikely as that is still the message coming out. The interesting thing is that even Zelensky seems to be hedging his bets right now. He has not completely rejected the Chinese peace plan. And if you look at the amount of ammunition and equipment that Ukraine is asking for and what the West is able to provide, there is a big gap. So there are more reports coming out that Ukraine's prospects to win militarily are shrinking. And so that's putting pressure on Zelensky. There's also an international effort right now to bring Ukraine and Russia to the negotiating table. Some of it's being led by Lula in Brazil. And Lula said that China and India should lead that effort to get the two sides together. So the United States is not in a strong position, but there are many in the United States who are willing to fight to the last Ukrainian in order to defeat China and Russia in this.
But I'm just practically looking at the situation. It appears to me that even more than Putin is Xi Jinping who has the cards. It is China which is trying to emerge as the peace broker. And the China negotiated outcome could heavily favor Russia. You scarcely expect a China negotiated outcome to favor America. If China is holding the cards, do you trust China, Peter? China is going to help Putin, not Biden.
Well, China is calling for a ceasefire. And the point that American leaders keep making is that a ceasefire right now actually supports Russia much more than Ukraine.
But Americans don't have a choice.
Russia controls much of the Donbass.
But America doesn't have a choice. Yeah. You know, Zelensky's become so corrupt.
Ukrainians are willing to keep fighting.
And the Ukrainian government has become so corrupt and so fed by so much money and infighting, and their financial needs are just skyrocketing.
Ukraine has always been corrupt.
But more corrupt now than ever before.
Well, there's more money available now than ever before.
That's the point. Tatiana, how do you look at it from Moscow? Is this a step towards the ending of the war or something else?
Good evening, Arnab. Well, look, I don't think that our American friends are ready to handing the towel just yet, you know. Okay. Despite my best hopes for this outcome, and I've told you, I think I told you a year ago, and I will tell you now that, you know, unfortunately, until there's an end to the endless military supplies that the US continues to make money on, there's not going to be any negotiation about anything. But you remember the last time that President Putin offered a ceasefire, an end to hostilities, to allow the Orthodox Christians to celebrate Christmas. And what did the Ukrainian side do? They continued firing. Any negotiation, any type of compromise can only come from two sides. If there's only one side invested in this, it's never going to happen.
See, Peter, I find Xi very untrustworthy, and from an Indian perspective, you know, I think that China does not respect other nations' sovereign territory, and which is why, you know, we need to counterbalance them globally. However, in the present situation, if you look at the situation internationally, Peter, I think America has sort of, you know, I would say shot itself in the foot. China just negotiated a peace deal between Riyadh and Tehran. America lost out. Biden went all over to try and make up with Saudi Arabia. It did not help. Now you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, Moscow, Beijing, all becoming one bloc, and large other influential nations, powers, great powers like India, defending our own national interest. So I don't know what is the West really achieved. I mean, if you look at the sum total, Peter, I know you've been a cynic, but is America living under some kind of illusion on this?
Biden came to office saying he was going to reestablish American hegemony. The United States will be back #1.
Who?
Well, that hasn't happened. And you know, it's important to realize that most of the world is not going along with U.S. sanctions.
It's not.
2/3 to 3/4 of the world population are not supporting U.S. sanctions.
Yes.
Only 33 countries are. And so the United States, while it's not weak and isolated, the United States is not able to assert itself in a multipolar world the way it was for 3 decades when the U.S. was the unipolar power. Russia can challenge the United States to some extent militarily, and China is challenging the United States economically and now diplomatically. I mean, the deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia was in many ways a game changer. China is going to play a new role in the world now. And Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow on the heels of the Iran-Saudi deal is a very important global diplomatic development. If Xi can negotiate a peace deal between you, and he's going to talk to Zelensky next, then Xi will be up for the Nobel Peace Prize, you know, and he'll deserve it if he can broker a peace here. That's what the world wants. Most of the world does not want to see more fighting.
So then, in a way,
there is nothing to be gained.
So in a way, therefore, Andrew and Tatiana, it's exactly worked the other way around. I mean, if things move in this direction, then the whole idea of pushing NATO, encouraging Ukraine, this has been the tipping point when the West loses a lot of power globally and influence. It's moving in that direction. I think, Andrew, what do you think? I'm sure you agree with me. I'm sure you do.
Well, there's no doubt that the world is now changing quite quickly from a unipolar world order, as it were, dictated entirely by the United States, to one which is more multipolar. According to the OECD's research, the developing world, particularly, of course, including India and China and countries in Latin America and Africa, are going to account for 60% of the world economy by the world 2035 using purchasing power parity measurements. And according to Goldman Sachs' latest research, by the year 2027, the top 8 countries in the world will all be developing countries now, except the United States by then, which will descend from world #1 to world #3 after China and
then
India.
Southeast
the
Asia
whole world is changing quite rapidly.
Yeah, Southeast Asia is out of American grip. You got Iran, Saudi Arabia, India, China, Russia, all independent in our foreign policy. So things are moving very differently right now. Tatiana, last question to you. Is it really advantage Putin to call a ceasefire now, immediately? Has he achieved all his military objectives?
No, first of all, obviously not. And if you remember, the military objectives and generally the objectives were what the president called the denazification of Ukraine. So that means that the current regime has to go away. And that is the goal that has not yet been achieved. But obviously, to agree to your point, Arnab, I think that, and that's what Russia and China and actually India have been talking about for years and years, the multipolar world that we just simply must come to, because it's time to stop the dictate of the US doctrine in the world.
Well, we're going to keep a very close watch, ladies and gentlemen, on those talks that have been happening. And I personally think it's going to have the ripple effect. And I know, people won't like it, but Putin still has the edge on this one. It's quite clear to all of us. And I thank you very much for watching tonight. Viewers, we are watching the situation very closely as far as the United Kingdom is concerned. And we've also summoned the American top diplomats to lodge a protest over the attack on the Indian consulate in San Francisco. On that and what we believe will be follow-up action on what happened in London. See you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Good night and goodbye.